In this tutorial, Chef, I am taking us to the Jewish deli. It's a classic homemade matzo ball soup. Next, it's Ruben's and latkes with homemade Thousand Island dressing. And lastly, my take on a classic noodle kugel. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Sartorial Kitchen, everybody. Today, it is all about Jewish foods. Deli staples to be specific. We are kicking things off with a classic matzo soup. So matzo, it's almost like a chicken noodle soup broth, but instead of noodles, you have these matzo balls, which are made with matzo meal. Now, I couldn't find the matzo meal, so I got some matzo crackers here, and we're just gonna give them a little pulverize in our food processor. We only need about a cup. Now, matzo crackers, they're a little thicker, heartier. You can kind of see here all the cross points. They're kind of a bland cracker, not really much flavor to them. And I'm just going to use about half the container. And we're just going to grind them into a nice dust. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to move this guy here. Now, our base, we're going to start with 4 eggs. I always like to do my eggs first so I can watch for eggshells. And since the crackers do not have any salt or any kind of flavoring, I do want to add some salt here. I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper. They're going to pick up a lot of flavor from the soup broth as they cook. I just want to kind of help them out a little bit. You know, I'm all about layers of flavor. And then we're just going to give that a whisk. I like to beat the eggs up so it's easier to incorporate all the other ingredients. And we've got the yolks mixed in there. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I need just about a cup of the matzo here. About a cup and a half. And then I also need a half cup of olive oil, or I'm sorry, vegetable oil. Okay. And then I'm just going to come in here again and kind of mix that up until it gets nice and incorporated. Okay, that looks pretty good. I got a sheet pan here. I'm just going to give it a quick spritz. Keep our balls from sticking. I'm going to also grab my ice cream scoop. I love using the ice cream scoop because your balls are all, you know, your balls are going to be the same size, and we're just going to kind of scoop them out here onto our tray. I'm going to pop these in the fridge and kind of let them set up. Now, this is a soup I have enjoyed since a child. There's this Jewish deli that my grandma used to take me to all the time. It's not around anymore. And this was one of the things on their menu, and I just thought it was so interesting. They have like the kind of, it's almost like a dumpling. They have those big balls in there, and all those fresh vegetables. Really flavorful soup. And we're going to be exploring some other dishes from that deli as well. Okay, so that's the balls there. You should have about 10 to 12, depending on what size you make. And we're just going to pop those in the fridge, and we're going to move on to our broth. Alright, let's talk broth. So like I said, it's almost like a chicken soup. only with the matzo balls. And the matzo balls are great. They're going to get nice and moist in our broth here. And right now I've got a container of chicken broth. And then we're going to add to that equal parts water. Kind of stretch it out. And we're going to be adding lots of things to make this a nice, flavorful broth. Okay, now chicken stock, it's already high in sodium, so you don't need any salt, but I do want some pepper. I'll be adding about a teaspoon and a half of pepper. I've also got some poultry seasoning here, and I'm going to be adding about a teaspoon of the poultry seasoning. And I'm just going to give that a whisk. And I've got that on high. I'm going to let that come to a boil. Now we're going to work on our aromatics. I've got carrots here, celery, onions. That is kind of staples for any good soup. Now the soup is really just about the broth and the balls. So we're really just using this for aromatics. So I'm going to cut the end off on this celery here. We don't need that guy. And I'm just going to give it a rough chop into some kind of big pieces. Now the easiest way, so you're not picking pieces out of your broth, I like to use a strainer. I just set the strainer right down into the broth. And I can drop in my veggies. I've also got some carrots here that I have kind of rinsed off. And if I were eating these, I would go ahead and peel them. But they're just for the broth, so I'm just going to kind of cut them in half and then quarter them. And that is also going to go straight into our broth. They're going to cook, they're going to get nice and tender, and they're going to release those flavors into our broth. And vegetables are usually pretty cheap. A lot of things I get out of my garden out back, so it's really it's a very cost-effective way to add a lot of flavor without spending a lot of money. I've also got an onion here. I'm just going to kind of cut it, always cut it on the hairy side first, and then take off the end. I do want to get past this first layer with the skin on it. We do not want any skin in our soup. So it's going to take that right off. And then I'm going to cut it again into halves. And we're going to throw that right in. And last but not least, I've got a lemon here. I like lemon in this because it really brightens it up. The matzo can be kind of heavy. I mean, you saw I made them, they're a little on the dense side. It's a hearty soup. So I'm just going to roll this lemon a little bit. That releases those natural juices. And I'm going to just cut that in half. You don't have to worry about the seeds because we've got our strainer in here, so that's the nice thing. I'm going to give it a little squeeze here and just get as much juice out as I can. And then I'm going to leave the lemons in there because there's a lot of flavor in the zest too, and that's going to kind of come out as this boils. And we are just going to let that come to a boil, and we will move on to our dumplings. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, our soup is bubbling away nicely, making that beautiful music. I love the sounds of the kitchen. I'm just going to take my knife here and kind of poke at our vegetables here. It should go right through. Nice. And a piece of celery there. Lovely. Time for the balls. And to remove our aromatics, I'm just going to kind of grab a bowl here. It's going to want to splash. Okay, we'll set that aside for now till they cool off. And that broth looks delicious, but we're not done yet. Time for the matzo. And I just want to be really gentle. I'm going to take a spatula here. And I'm just going to kind of gently plop them in, one at a time. So I want to make make sure they stay intact, so I want to be really delicate. Guys, I think our soup is ready. We just need a ladle. I'm going to get one nice big ball here. I'm going to get some of that broth. And I want you to just have a look at this. Isn't that amazing? I'm going to try and just get some of the broth first. Just the right amount of pepper. Has a nice kick. Good amount of sodium. You get that freshness from the lemon. Really jazzes up the box broth. And all that onion, carrot, and celery. Now let's dip into our little ball here. You can see it's nice and cooked through. Very nice. It's like a little sponge. It just soaks up all those flavors. I like kind of breaking it apart and letting it kind of get nice and spongy from the broth. Very good, you guys. Okay, so next it is going to be Ruben's and latkes, so stay tuned. And I'm starting right now with my noodle kugel. So I've got some egg noodles here, about half a container. I have just cooked those until they are nice and tender. I'm going to set this in my fridge and let it cool down. And we're going to work on my custard. You don't want to put the custard right into the hot noodles directly because that's going to scramble your eggs. So we're going to cool this down. Okay, now while that cools down, we're going to move on to the custard. I've already got half a stick of melted butter in here. To that, I just need 4 eggs. I like to start with the eggs first so I can watch for eggshells. Nobody wants eggshell in their noodle kugel. And this is a dish I've not had before, but I've been really curious to try it. Just a pinch of salt now. It's always intrigued me. I've seen it on cooking shows. And when I decided to do this episode, I thought, you know, why not give it a shot? I know pretty much the components, so we're just going to kind of throw this together here. Some cinnamon here. We're going to do about half a teaspoon of cinnamon. We want this to have some good flavor here. And then about a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. This is, it's interesting because it's a baked noodle dish, but it's kind of sweet. So, I like that. Okay, now we're going to mash the eggs up here and give it a nice whisk. Okay, now for the rest of our ingredients, I need a cup of sour cream. It's going to give it some nice tang. It's going to give it, going to make it nice and moist. And that just goes right in. Now, most recipes usually call for cottage cheese, but the Italian in me, I thought, you know, I want to make this dish my own. So I have some ricotta, which is like an Italian cottage cheese. It's nice and soft. You don't necessarily have those big curds like you do in the cottage cheese. But yeah, if you want to use cottage cheese, that's fine. I just wanted to try something different here. And we also need a cup of that. We need a ½ cup of sugar. I'm just going to measure that out in here. Okay, that's a ½ cup. So this is going to be nice and sweet, and then we've got a few savory flavors in there. And then I'm going to continue to whisk this. We want to incorporate the butter and the eggs and the sugar. And now traditionally, you would bake this in like a cake pan, but I wanted to try something different. I wanted to make little mini kind of individual kugels, and then everybody can have their own little kugel. I thought that would be a lot of fun. So I've got some large cupcake pans here, and I've greased those down so they are ready to go. Now let's check on our noodles. Okay, our noodles are nice and cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a spoon here, and I'm just going to scoop some of these noodles out and into the mold. I'm going to fill it up about halfway so we've got room for the custard to fit. And then I have one more surprise ingredient. Okay, and we're just going to fill that up, not quite to the top. Take some of that out. You want to leave a little room because those eggs are going to rise. You don't want it to come over. So yeah, just about a ladle and a half. Some golden raisins here. You can use the purple raisins if you want. I like the golden. I think they're a little sweeter. But a kugel isn't a kugel without the raisins. You have to have the raisins. So I'm just going to get a little pinch of raisin here and just sprinkle that right on top. Alright, I have already preheated my oven to 375 degrees. I'm going to pop these babies in. They're going to bake for about 25 to 30 minutes. If you do the actual casserole, which you can still do, it's going to cook closer to 35 minutes. But this, since we're working with less surface area, it's not going to take nearly as long to cook. And I'm going to go ahead and set my timer. And we will move on to our entree. Okay, on to our main course. I am making Ruben's classic Jewish deli sandwich and latkes, classic Jewish side. So, for the latkes, you need potatoes. You can use fresh potatoes if you want. You're going to need about 2 whole potatoes if you want to shred those up. The thing about fresh potatoes is you have to be ready to use them because they will start to oxidize. They'll start to turn this ugly gray color if you don't get to them right away. These are box dehydrated potatoes. They work just great. You fill it up with water, hot water. You let it go for about 10 to 12 minutes, and you're ready to go. In this, I also mixed in a couple teaspoons of dehydrated onions, minced onions. And I'm just running this through my strainer here. You want to get all that liquid out. Set that aside just for now. We need 1 egg. That's going to help bind this together. As always, I do my egg first, so I can watch for eggshells. And I'm just going to give that a little whisk. Nice. To that, I need some salt. A couple pinches of salt. Couple pinches of black pepper, and I also am going to add some garlic powder here. Just about a teaspoon of garlic powder, and just kind of stir that in. Okay, now we can add our potatoes. I think they are good and drained. I'm just going to dump them right in. Need some flour. I've got just some all-purpose flour here. We need about 3 teaspoons of flour. I'm just going to dump that right on top. And we're going to come in and we're going to whisk that together. Get that nice and incorporated. You want that flour and that egg to kind of come together. That's going to make your potatoes stick. I think that looks pretty good. Set that guy aside. Now we want to check our oil here. I've shown you this before. You can take a little water on the fingertips and splash it down. I don't think that's quite ready yet. Alright, now while we wait for our oil to come to temp, we're going to get started on our sandwich here. A Ruben is basically 5 components. It's a 5-component sandwich. Thousand Island, Swiss, sauerkraut, corned beef, and your bread, which I've got some pumpernickel here. The sauerkraut, I opened a can of sauerkraut. I'm letting that drain. It's also got a little moisture in it like the potato. It's going to make your sandwich soggy. You don't want a soggy sandwich. So, we're going to get that going. Ruben's take me back. There was a Jewish deli in this area called Izzy's. One of my grandma's favorite places. We didn't eat out much, but she loved Izzy's. So we would eat there quite often. So I just need a couple spoons of this mayonnaise. And that was my first introduction to kind of Jewish food. She loved it. I loved it. It was, you know, a fun experience with her. We'd sit at the counter and they'd wait on us. So many fond memories there. Okay, to that, some ketchup here, about equal parts. This is basically, Thousand Island is basically like a French dressing, but it's got some pickle relish in it here. I'm just going to dump that in. And I want some of that acid too. That's going to give my sauce some nice flavor. And I've also got a fresh lemon here. I'm just going to roll this baby out. Release some of those juices. I love adding fresh lemon to different things. The lemon juice, it really brightens things up. We're just going to squeeze about half a lemon in here. It's going to add a little tartness. It's going to enhance the relish. And it's just going to brighten up and freshen that mayonnaise. Okay, now let's test my oil again. We don't want our oil too hot because our potatoes will burn before they cook through. That sounds pretty good. Yes, I'm going to turn this down now to low. And let's grab an ice cream scoop. I love using ice cream scoops because everything comes out the same size. We're just going to plop that right in. And we don't want to overcrowd our pan, so we'll probably do a couple batches here. I think I may be able to fit 4. Sounds pretty good. And you'll know when they're ready. You'll notice that the potatoes start to crisp up on the sides. That's when you know they're ready to flip. So those are going to go. I'm going to mix up my sauce here. Thousand Island. And it smells great. The pickles, the lemon juice. Doesn't that look delicious? I wish I had smell-o-vision for you guys. Okay, that's pretty good. Now let's start putting our sandwiches together. I've got some pumpernickel here. Rye is traditional. I like a dark rye, which is basically what a pumpernickel is. But if you want to do the marble rye or a light rye, that's just fine as well. And I need my 2 pieces of bread here. I'm a little bit of a glutton, so I'm going to put some of this Thousand Island on both sides of the bread. Just kind of spread it out. Nice, generous helping. So good. Okay, now next is going to be our cheese. I've just got some baby Swiss here. I like the baby Swiss because it has a little bit nicer melting temperature here. And so potatoes are looking pretty good. Yeah, so like when you're doing like a grilled sandwich or something like that, or panini, something like that, you want a cheese that's going to give you better melting quality. And then I've also got some ground beef here, or I'm sorry, some corned beef here. And corned beef, it's basically like a brisket. It's crusted in pickling spices, so you get some fun flavors there from that. I just had the butcher slice me up some, and I'm just gonna do about 3 slices here. I think is good. You can see that nice crust there, so flavorful. And the Reuben is not a Reuben without kraut. So we're just gonna wipe this guy off here. And you don't need much, you just need enough. Gives you a little bit different texture, and then you get that kind of zing. Sauerkraut is basically just like pickled cabbage. I've made it before. You just need vinegar, you need some salt, kind of cook it down, you can can it. Good stuff. And flip this baby over. Now we do need some butter to get our bread to toast. And just a nice generous bit of butter on both sides. I'm going to throw this side in first, and then we'll butter our other side. And that baby is ready to go. Okay, I got my sandwich going. I think these babies are ready to flip. Oh yes, beautiful golden brown. I love it. Who doesn't like a crispy potato? Those were always my favorite at the deli. Grandma would always order extra. I just loved, you'd bite into them and just they would ooze in your mouth. Just that greasy potato goodness. They were different than anything else. You know, I'd had french fries before, but these were just something else. There was something about them, and I still love them to this day. I'm going to lay down some paper towels so we can drain the grease off of those. We don't want them to be too greasy. Our sandwich, you can kind of hear that too, sizzling. We've got our kugel going. Okay. Now I seasoned these once already, but Okay, our sandwich, you can hear that is starting to cook down nicely. These babies should be ready to come out. I've got a plate here and a paper towel. I'm just going to drain the grease here. I like fried foods, but I don't like all the grease. Okay. Those look amazing. Ready for round 2. Alright, let those go. I think our sandwich is ready to be flipped. Yes, it is. It's hard to tell with pumpernickel because it's already dark, but you can kind of scrape your spatula against it and you can hear it, that crisp. Now, I know we kind of salt these when I was mixing it up, but I always like to add a little salt once they come out of the grease. Alright, let's get our sandwich here. I love when the cheese kind of comes down and gets crispy on the edges. This little potato pancake here, a couple of those. And we are ready to eat. Okay. I think I'm going to come in here, the potato cake. You can just pick it up and eat it with your hands. Yum. You get that nice crisp as soon as you bite into it. The potatoes are nice and tender on the inside. You get that sharpness from the onion, the garlic, just the right amount of salt and pepper. Very nice. I'm going to go in for another bite. Nice and buttery and flavorful. Now for the Ruben here, you've got all those layers of flavor in here. Very nice. Immediately I'm getting that Thousand Island. It's nice and bright and acidic. This is a heavy sandwich, so you need a sauce like that. That's going to kind of round everything out. You get a little bit of zing from the sauerkraut. Gives you some nice texture, some nice body. Then you just have that richness of the corned beef, the Swiss, and then that nice crisp on the pumpernickel. So good. Okay, I'm going to finish up my potatoes here, and then my kugel should be ready to come out. Stay tuned. Oven is off. These guys are ready to come out. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, look at that. Perfectly golden brown on top. And they're nice and firm. I'm excited. I have not had these before. I'm very excited. Come in here and scoop this baby right on out. Oh, doesn't that look good? You've got that nice brown crust on the outside, and then you've got that crispy noodle on top, but the egg is nice and soft. I'm just going to cut into this. You can see how nice and soft and fluffy that egg is. And then you've got the raisins, which have kind of plumped up a little in the custard. So I am ready for a taste. Let's come in here. It's kind of hot, so. That is really good. It's sweet, like a sweet custard you'd expect. You got that sugar, the cinnamon, and the nutmeg give you a little kind of warm flavor. Plays really nicely with the raisins, actually. And then I love, you get a little texture where the outside of the egg has kind of colorized, and the noodle on top it's gotten kind of crunchy, so you get a little crunch. Wow, so good. I really recommend this noodle kugel, and this is a quick, easy way to do it. A nice, fun, different dessert, very easy dessert to make. So, that is my Jewish feast, everybody. As always, I thank you for joining me in the kitchen today. Like and subscribe at the bottom. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and until next time, bon appetit.